Welcome to the Stoic Bodywork Podcast, where we focus on balancing the body, opening the mind, and awakening the spirit. I'm Octavia, your co-host. Just a quick reminder, all the information shared here is for general informational purposes only and isn't intended as professional, medical, or legal advice. All right, let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of the Stoic Bodywork Podcast. I am joined by Octavia, as always. Say hi, Octavia.
Hey there, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be here. Let's dive into today's episode.
Today, I'm going to have Octavia interview me a bit on how I came up with the Stoic Bodywork philosophy that we use here, the practice itself, as well as I have been pretty hard at work on a book that is just an amalgamation of everything I've done in my career so far and a previous podcast I did once before. So I thought we'd dive into all that. To start with, I just want everybody to know that the philosophy of Stoic Bodywork is to balance the body, open the mind, and awaken the spirit. So let's start off with some questions. What do you got for me, Octavia?
All right, let's dive in. To start off, could you share a bit about what initially inspired you to develop the Stoic Bodywork philosophy?
I have studied philosophy my entire life for the most part, more years than more years alive studying it than not. When I was 12 years old, growing up as a military brat, the individual who was known as my father, he had me read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and I honestly had no idea what I was reading, or I didn't even know what philosophy really was. And somehow, in doing that, and at the same time learning to play chess, because that was the whole thing, I got this just insatiable appetite for philosophy. And we can talk about a little bit more of some of the other things I've studied, but what happened in the end was, after everything I read and studied from different systems, philosophy, medical systems, cultivation processes, cultures, religions, I came up with this kind of short list of things nearly every one of them talked about. And that was this thing called the self, and, this human condition, that we were these, humans in these bodies doing this stuff. But every time there was a conversation about the physical health body, how to maintain it, what to do with it, how it worked. The mental health body, same thing, what to do with it, how it worked. And then a spiritual health body. So that's what was the creation or where the creation of the Stoic Bodywork methods came from.
That's such a fascinating journey. It sounds like your early introduction to philosophy really set the stage for everything that followed. I'd love to hear more about how you see those three aspects, the physical, mental, and spiritual health bodies, working together in the Stoic bodywork practice.
So as a therapeutic body worker, someone who works with the physical health body regularly, and we also do physical training here at Stoic Bodywork, we are constantly seeing how the physical system works and different aspects of it that might not be working. Often in my practice, I have individuals come to me with mobility issues or flexibility issues or pain sensations. Things from frozen shoulder to sprained ankles to just muscles that aren't working correctly, or nagging pinched nerve pains, or uh, all sorts of different things. And I find that, although, yes, I am the practitioner that most closely works with the physical health body, and there's other practitioners that do similar, PT, chiropractic, any manipulation method. When we work on the physical health body, specifically also when there's a pain sensation happening, we have a mental outlook that is bad. People who are trapped in pain cycles, they generally, suffer mentally. And so if you can eliminate those issues, then the individual ends up getting also a mental health body benefit. They get out of a pain cycle, they feel better, they can move again. That helps the mental health side of things. Vice versa to that, I talk to a lot of mental health providers who find, when they treat someone's mental health conditions or help them with their mental health conditions, they might be getting that individual out of a melancholy and lethargic state that allows them to go be more physical and even just to take a walk, and that will help them have better physical health. Maybe their diet changes, maybe their exercise routine changes, maybe just their environment in their house changes, so they clean and they keep things a little bit more tidy so they get sick a lot less. Different things like that. That's how the health body treatment kind of shadows into one area or the other. In the practice that I do currently, I have in the past done some spiritual practices, mostly through my teaching of Tai Chi and Qigong, but also in doing bioelectric work with individuals working on the bioelectric field. That is the kind of more spiritual side of things, but that has anchor in both the mental and physical as well. So that's how those three things work together, at least in my practice.
That's a really insightful way to look at it. It's amazing how interconnected those aspects are and how improving one area can have such a positive ripple effect on the others. It's clear that your approach really honors the whole person, and that's so valuable.
What other kind of questions you got for me?
Well, I'm curious about how you integrate these principles into your sessions with clients. Like, do you have any specific techniques or approaches that you find really effective in blending that physical work with the mental and even the spiritual aspects for them?
I do, and I will be careful to say that as a physical, a therapeutic body worker, I am not a mental health provider. I'm not a medical professional. None of this is medical or professional advice or even mental health advice. And I say that to my clients very specifically, but I do have clients who seek out, they know themselves. People know themselves. And so when you have health practices that you are engaging with, if you need someone to come to you from a vertice, a vector, like if you're a very mental person and someone's just treating you physically, that doesn't always work for you. So I do have clients who come to me and they ask for, let's say bioelectric field work. And maybe it's for trying to have a somatic release. A somatic response is a response where we work on the body physically and there's an emotional outlet. And so, if that is our targeted practice using something like craniosacral or maybe a Qigong method that I might use, I'm technically a Qigong healer by practice. I don't really market it that way, but my use of bioelectric field and my understanding of the bioelectric field is rooted in my qigong practice and my tai chi understanding. So when I do work with an individual in that sense, we do get somatic releases. And I'm very careful to say, like, hey, are you working with a mental health provider? Because you need to be able to process these things if that's our targeted outcome. I've also had mental health providers refer clients to me and say, hey, I really like you to build a rapport with this client and then try to get some somatic releases done. Because, yeah, the physical health body holds on to mental stress and even mental trauma quite a bit. The fascial system or the fascia system is just decidedly trying to figure out what's happening to you at all times. And so emotional stressors or, just minor traumas, be it from a fearful position or actually, instead of going down that deep rabbit hole, here's a really simple one for everybody that I think everybody can understand. A ticklish response is a guarded muscle. If someone's ticklish somewhere, they're guarding that area. And that could be from a minor trauma all the way to a major trauma. So when we are targeting those things on the physical aspect, using physical manipulation, we might get a somatic response, or we can go to something very soft touch space, like craniosacral, where I'm just right at the cranial attachment points for the whole fascial lines, everything, how it all comes together there. So I'll be right at the occipitals, kind of holding a very light pressure. And I'm having a general conversation with the body about, is there tension here? Is there tension there? How's the fascial system responding? What is in the fascia as far as, tight areas or not tight areas or areas that I feel like are drawing me to it. That's where a lot of the intuitive practice comes in and the intuition and the instincts that I've developed over time. So doing that type of work can get the mental health side with a somatic release. Or I'll have individuals who come in and I do that and then they go home and they say like, oh, I just had like a really deep night's sleep and I really just reset. So those responses can happen afterwards as well.
That's really amazing how you're able to help people connect those dots between their physical experiences and their emotional and mental well being. It sounds like a really holistic and thoughtful approach. And I can imagine your clients really appreciate that level of care and attention.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of feedback from individuals. Stoic Bodywork has nearly 1,000 different clients we've seen. And I've done my best to be humble over the years, but in more recent years, I've started to learn that there's not a lot of people who do what I do, specifically the bodywork practice, um, or approach things from this perspective of there's these three health bodies, and you will get better outcomes if you are using the vector that best works for that individual. If they're a spiritual person, you need to give it a spiritual vector. You know, you can do physical work on them and help them, but they may need the spiritual incorporation to get the best outcome possible. Um, and being humble, I have in some cases stepped away from, you know, advertising in certain ways or marketing in certain ways, or even just practicing in certain methodologies or with certain individuals. I wasn't very good with younger kids for a long time just because I didn't know how I was affecting them with those three health bodies. You know, kids are really impressionable and they're trying to figure things out. And it's a tough thing to do, especially when there's hormones and the physical system isn't talking to the mental system correctly. And the mental system's all over the place because of the endocrine system's responses. And then add in, you know, very little practice when it comes to spirituality for the youthful generations nowadays. So all of that can be a big discordant, and I wasn't capable of working on them in a positive method. I thought. Turns out, no, I actually happen to be pretty good with kids, specifically athletes. I do well with younger athletes, but you know, kids want them. They want to be recognized, and they want to understand that I'm not treating them like a child. Yes, in certain cases, like you know, their parents are always there in the room with them, and I might refer to the parent to ask questions if they don't know, or but there's always a time every time I work with a kid where there'll be something going on in their body that they don't quite understand, and I'm just able to ask a question that they can respond to because I treat them like an adult. I don't treat them like a child. I treat them like, hey, this is your body, these are your experiences, you know, just because you're younger than me or maybe don't have as many experiences as I do doesn't mean that yours are any lesser. You know, in fact, honestly, I'm so happy that I don't have to experience the things that they're experiencing because that was a rough time in my life. So uh, that's, you know, one of the things that I've learned as far as my responses from my clients and the things they say of, yeah, this system does work. So, you know, that's what I got to say about that. What else you got for me?
Well, I'd love to know a bit more about how you see Stoic bodywork evolving in the future. Are there any new approaches or philosophies that you're thinking of integrating, or maybe even some new projects on it right now?
So I am currently working on a book that is about the Stoic bodywork philosophies, but also all of my work with mental health and self awareness, which is a long time in the making. And so that's one thing I'm working on right now. Is I have this manuscript that I'm hopefully done with soon, and we can pass off to the editor, and she can do her magic, and then we can get that out to the public. In the same way, I am educating individuals in the Stoic Bodywork Method, slowly but surely. Stacy, the trainer who works with us here at Stoic Bodywork, she every day she's here, she's learning something new usually because I don't shut up sometimes. But so she's learning the physical training side of things as well as she's a super curious person and is awesome at what she does. So she even looks at like what I do and other aspects and different understandings that I have, as well as creating her own. I'm hopefully taking on an apprentice by the end of this year. We'll see. We'll see if she decides to come on board and do some apprentice work. Because honestly, there's not a lot of people who do what I do, and there's not a lot of people who even educate what I do. I came from an education system that doesn't even exist anymore. Most of my education was mentorship. I wasn't even educated in massage until I went to massage school because I honestly had no idea what the heck it was. I didn't know what this thing called massage therapy was when I had to get my license. I was going to be grandfathered into the program, but they were like, oh, we're licensing massage therapists in your state. You need to get a license. And I was like, well, what the heck is massage therapy? And so I went to school for it because I didn't know what it was. Turns out it's wholly not body work. It's mostly practiced as a relaxation technique. And yes, I've said before, massage therapists can be body workers, but they're not educated that way. Last episode, I talked about how people aren't educated about how their systems work. So when I talk about the education system as far as body work and massage therapy go, one thing I would really like to change there is some sort of standardized definition between the two that allows massage therapists to move into more body work. Massage therapy is a great way to get into working with the human system physically, as far as helping people relax, or even just doing minor techniques, to help with aches and pains. There can be some, therapeutic outcome there that can be accomplished. So, but learning just the massage practices that are based on the Swedish techniques don't really get you there. And so when we look at the education system, I have reached out to places in the past to create education programs for that, continuing education, which we are required to do. For those who don't know, a licensed massage therapist in my state and other states have a continuing education requirement. It's usually somewhere around 24 hours, 16 of which in my personal state have to be hands on. And so that can be daunting at my level where honestly, there's not many people who teach at my level. Again, this is where I've tried to be humble for a really long time, but I'm starting to have to move away from that. And I do try to say this humbly. It's not that it's not that there aren't educators. It's just that the majority of individuals who are being marketed to and are also seeking, you always market to the people who are actually willing to buy your products, are seeking more basic level information because they're either starting out or they're trying to learn a new relaxation technique. And so a lot of it's based on anything from different Swedish techniques to Thai techniques to, but it's all mostly relaxation. It's spa based. I should say it that way. It's based on working in a spa because that's where these people make their money. So they want things that'll help them make more money there. That's how continuing education usually works. So bodywork education, as far as the practices there, that would be something I've stepped into, and I want to create an apprenticeship program in my state so that individuals like myself, because we do exist, we're out there, um, could do some sort of apprenticeship program. I graduated one apprentice before, Kayla. She's wonderful. She's off doing her own thing, practicing in her own way. I was over to see her recently. She's just honestly doing amazing. She's finally created her way of doing massage. It was awesome to see. Super proud of her, even though I don't try to say it that way in some cases because I don't find myself to be much different. Our experiences were different. I just had more time in education. That's all. But she's off practicing, and that's awesome. So I'd like to do that again for someone. That's how I was taught. I was taught through mentorship. So some mentorship, some working on the book, getting that out, and creating some other education systems, but also expanding. I think the Western health system is honestly, it's failing, and it's failing quickly. And we need to create new systems that will support the pieces that can be supported. Am I a medical practitioner or a professional? No. The state health board has made that very clear. The insurance companies make that very clear. And honestly, I'm totally fine with that. What needs to occur, though, is for myself and others that do similar things, start to be part of the system and pick up the slack where the Western medicine system doesn't have time or the ability. Getting in to get imaging nowadays can take time, specifically for MRIs. Yeah, telehealth has helped quite a bit, but the practitioners are overwhelmed. It's not their fault. They have massive amounts of caseloads. I had Dr. Nicole on episode 2 of the podcast. If you haven't gone back and, if you haven't listened to that one yet, go back and listen to my conversation with Dr. Nicole. She is working constantly doing cancer treatment, and I would say, she's doing an amazing job, but you can hear her talk about it. She's overwhelmed in the sense of just the amount of caseload she has, right? She's doing everything she can, but it's just constant. She sees a lot of people every week, constantly. So the systems are, they're overstressed. The individuals are overstressed. So I think a wellness center of some sort, which brings all of these things together on the what I would consider the tertiary routes, but the non-traditional vectors, mental health practitioners working with body workers, working with physical therapists, working with physical trainers, all in the same place as a wellness center, I think would be a cool thing to bring to the community.
That all sounds amazing. It's clear you have such a holistic vision for Stoic bodywork and for the wellness community. Bringing all these different practices together under one roof as a wellness center would be so beneficial. And I can imagine your book is going to be a fantastic resource for people who want to dive deeper into your philosophies and methods. It's all really exciting stuff.
Let's move into your next question, Octavia.
Absolutely. So, thinking about the future of Stoic bodywork and the wellness center idea, what would you say is the biggest challenge you foresee in bringing all these different modalities together under one roof?
That is probably going to be that we all have worked independently for so long. The body worker specifically is a very lonely profession in the sense that we do it by ourselves, and often that's it. Like, you'll have occasionally individuals who work with PTs or chiropractors, and they might work in the office there, and they're typically directed by. So, one of the hardest challenges for me going into this is, although I have over 15 years of experience and I've created all these philosophies and methods, and I do, act at a very high level, I'm not the medical professional in the room. If I want to work with a doctor of physical therapy, that's the doctor in the room, right? I have to respect that. And at the same time, those individuals are used to running their own practices and doing it themselves. So it's it's hard to bring these things together, but it really is necessary, in my personal opinion, when we talk about treating the mental health body, treating the physical health body, treating the spiritual health body. An individual in the community should be able to go and find these treatment methods all in the same place. And no, HIPAA would not allow for, and here's another challenge, HIPAA would not allow for us to, even though we are sharing the same space, we can't talk to each other. As the body worker in the room, I can't go over to the PT and say, "Hey, this is what's going on with this client." HIPAA doesn't allow that. We are different. We don't work under the same umbrella. We're different entities, and we're also different level professionals. So that gets into the whole insurance thing. As far as I know, the way a wellness center would be set up and how the insurance would go is, if I have my practice at a wellness center and there's a massage therapist, and maybe that massage therapist actually does work under me, or maybe that massage therapist, look, I'm honestly not a greedy person, so if that massage therapist wants to work under the PT, I honestly, I couldn't care less. But if the PT has their office and I have my office and the mental health practitioner has their office, and we just work at the same wellness center so that you have access to this all at the same place, we're different businesses. We have different HIPAA requirements. One of those requirements is we can't share files. We can't create a file on one individual that then is shared to the other individuals who are practicing, because we're different businesses. And that's a whole thing that's been in the industry forever. There's no open platform for how health records are shared, which is honestly nonsensical, because individuals do not have control over their own health records. You have to requisition them from your medical professionals to then give to new medical professionals. So in that sense, you don't own your own health records, which is super weird that HIPAA is designed to protect you from that very issue. But, get off my high horse on that one. So look, is it a pipe dream? Maybe, but I would like to have a place where all these individuals could come together and practice. So there are some major issues with that, and one of those is the health record sharing, and what the HIPAA violation level would be if the PT walks across the room and goes, "Hey, can you come check this out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure," but I've never seen this person before. They haven't actually come and seen me at my bodywork practice. Do I have to sit there and go through all their forms real quick? Like, yeah, it gets complicated, but if you sit down long enough, you can figure these things out. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in the future. But that's definitely some of the problems, and probably one of the reasons you don't see this very often. There are health centers out there, and there are health and wellness centers, absolutely, uh, but they're typically practitioners. It's still separated in that sense. You might go to a gym that has a PT or has a massage therapist in house. The individual I'm thinking about bringing on as a new apprentice at the end of this year, she has her own practice and it's at a gym, and that's great, but it's tough when you can't, as a practitioner who sees these person and helps them with body work, tell them to go do something out on the floor. We're not allowed to do that. We can't make recommendations as far as we can't diagnose or prescribe, that's one thing, but we also can't like tell you like go do these exercises. You have to tell them to go see the PT, and then you can't tell the PT what they're doing, what you just did, and then the PT has to tell them to go do it gets complicated. So yeah, that's definitely some complications that we're definitely going to have to figure out if this is going to go forward in any way. But let's move on to another question, because that's way off in the distance right now.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be challenging, but also really rewarding if you can make it work. It's definitely something that could really benefit the community if you can get all those pieces in place. But yeah, I'm happy to move on to the next question. What else is on your mind?
You're supposed to have the questions for me. Just so everybody knows, uh, Octavia here is an AI. She is helpful in many ways, but she is an AI. So if there's like long pauses, or I have to kind of negotiate the conversation one way or the other, give her some leeway, please. But what other questions do you have for me as far as my background, or the methodologies that I've come up with?
Absolutely. And thanks for the shout out. So, one thing I'm curious about is what inspired you to initially create the Stoic Bodywork philosophy? Was there a particular moment or experience that really sparked that idea for you?
Well, I suppose this section will be quite winded, because this philosophy is born from my struggles with my own self. Um, I suppose I will just jump into the long history lesson here. Um, when I was younger, I grew up in a. I mean, I won't sugarcoat it. It was a bad situation. I grew up. I mean, it honestly just was like some weird dichotomies. We were poor in a rich place, which means we were middle class, but we were poor because we grew up in one of the richest counties in America at the time. And in doing so, I was raised by a farmer who was a really, honestly, a bad business person that was really good in the military. He actually was a pretty good farmer. He, was one of the first people to come up with rotational grazing in the area. He was an intelligent individual in that way, but he was a military commander. He was not really great as a dad, to be honest. And also, shocker, later on, he didn't end up actually being my biological father, which is a whole weird thing. And, my mother was a master seamstress who honestly was one of the first people to figure out work from home. She worked from home as I was a kid. That didn't even exist back then. So it was an interesting dichotomy with my upbringing. But um, as far as those individuals, yeah, everybody was abusive, from physical abuse to mental abuse, to sexual abuse. There was a lot of abuse in that household, and I wasn't the only one that took the brunt of it. I was the youngest of four, and the other three were much older, which was another weird dichotomy. My oldest sibling was 16 years older than I was, and so she often, carrying me around, was getting a raft of, oh, I can't believe a girl, back then. I mean, we're going a while back here, people, and in Mennonite communities, to add other dichotomies to it. Oh, I can't believe a girl that young would have a child. No, it's my sister. Calm down. But I couldn't say that I was a baby. So she, she dealt with her own stuff. And my brothers, my middle brother, they didn't diagnose this back then, but he was really far on the spectrum. He was autistic to the point where, again, they didn't diagnose this stuff back then. He probably was never even diagnosed as an adult, but I knew to touch him on the shoulder and, say his name. I had to give some sort of physical cue, break his visual connection with the TV if I wanted his attention. No one did that. So they would just yell at him constantly. So seeing those things, also the physical beatings that they took, I took one or two, but I was the youngest, and my parents had kind of shied away from that. But there was that, and then there was the military commander father figure who's making me study philosophy. So there's just a lot of abuse. And I became quite suicidal. Mental health was not my forte when I was a kid. I was fat, and I was lazy, and I was unhealthy. I was eating Velveeta cheese because, again, we were technically poor, but we didn't know anything. Like no one in my family knew anything about health and fitness and wellness. And no, we ate Velveeta cheese, we ate canola oil, we ate the seed oils. Even though we grew up on a farm and yeah, there was some fresh produce and stuff like that, we ate cheap, crappy processed food because that was the easy thing. My parents ended up getting divorced, and so my mother was a single mother, and she was working from home, but she was also running her own business, doing house cleaning, and so she wasn't always home, and I had to fend for myself more often than not. And so it was easier for her to like have mac and cheese and y- easy meals, right? And again, I was a butterball fat kid. So I was craving sugar and like, yeah, give me ho-hos and Swiss rolls, right? Like that was what I was asking for. And so of course, like if you're a single mom, you're going to provide that, right? Because if I don't stop bitching, then you just get annoyed. So I don't falter for that stuff. We didn't have the education, and there was individuals in my family that were very bigoted. But across the board, it was just bad for everybody. My mother, she had, despite her shortfalls, I have to give some things out that like, look, everybody is an amalgamation of things, and she was an amalgamation of divorces and other weird circumstances. Technically, my biological father, is her stepbrother, as far as I understand it. So, and I didn't find that out till years later, and no one in the family knew, right? And they still don't know. I'm estranged from my family. They probably wouldn't even recognize me if they saw me on this podcast. So, don't really mind sharing these things, but so that created a lot of mental health issues in me and physical health issues because I wasn't taking care of my body, and the abuse was rampant. And eventually, there's just so many things. Eventually, I was able to escape all that. I'll put it that way. And escaping those abuse structures didn't really help in the beginning. I was going down the wrong path. I really was. I was headed in the wrong direction. I was seeking out bad options. And one of the bad options that I was seeking out is I was working for some unscrupulous people because I worked very young. I started working at a pretty young age in one way or the other. And I was always coming up with get rich quick schemes. My parents didn't understand what the internet was. And I was of the generation where like, we got the internet. Oh, the sound of dial up still rings in my ears. We got the internet. The internet was an amazing thing that came out. And I had this connection that if I, very late at night, if I would sneak up the stairs and unplug the upstairs phone line, I could go downstairs and plug in the phone line down there, and I could get on the internet. Oh, the things I was able to learn on the internet. But yeah, so I was on the internet. I was young. I was doing things, and then I was able to drive. And my mother got remarried, and she moved out, and she left me in a house by myself. So from the time I was 16 to 18, I kind of just lived on my own. Well, not to 18. I broke my femur in a car accident, which is where this story really starts. To answer Octavia's question, um, living in a house on my own, and kind of raising myself and building these psyches where I had to be my own big brother and be my own big sister and be my own dad and be my own mom and grandparent, blah, blah, blah. I had to build these archetypes in my mind. I didn't realize how mental of a person I was. And so I was letting my physical form deteriorate. And I also hated myself, both mentally and physically. And I had no idea. Spirituality was a horrid thing for me back then. I was raised Mennonite and forced to go to church. And look, I'm not against religions. I'm against indoctrination and blind faith. Have a faith if you want to, have a spiritual practice. That's completely on you. But the way I was raised was not that. And it was, definitely weighing on me. So I didn't even have a good spiritual outlet. So I had no good outlets. And then I break my femur in a car accident my senior year of high school. Again, living on my own in a house by myself. End up in a hospital. And I honestly hadn't even seen my family members in probably a couple weeks. It had been a few weeks since I had actually like seen them, like even talked to some of them. And so I break my femur in a car accident, and that starts a pretty odd journey where I get out of the hospital and I have this bar in my leg, and I'm not able to walk. I'm completely out of shape. Honestly, I lost a ton of weight in the hospital because I was finally like not eating terribly. I went into the hospital at about, I think 315, 320, and I came out around 280, and immediately started to put it back on because I just started eating like shit again. Pardon my French. I try to keep the cursing to a minimum on this podcast, but these stories is going to come out a little bit. And so from there, I actually end up moving out of. I had to move in after breaking my femur. I actually then had to move in with my mother because they don't let you out of the hospital if you're a minor without somebody signing off, apparently. And then I quickly escaped. I quickly moved out again and ended up renting this basement apartment from a woman who was very kind to me. She's very nice. Her son and I got along great. We went to school together. He's still a very good friend of mine to this day. Mostly because honestly we were roommates for a year or two. But we shared interests and all that stuff. But they were seeing this individual who did martial arts, and so I was like, okay, whatever. But he also did body work, and that's what I didn't know at the time. And they introduced me to him, and he took me from honestly, I couldn't even stand or walk very much. I was pretty much useless physically. Probably at the time, still around that 280, 290 mark. He took me from that to being able to stand, run, sprint, even do headstands, backflips, all the way down to 215 pounds. I think 210 was my absolute lightest I ever got down to. And then built my body back up from there using martial arts and the body work he did, and really just changed my perspective on life that way. And then at which time I did what I always do, which is, self-implode. So, or used to always do, I should say. I self-imploded and started working for some unscrupulous people. Sorry, bringing that all the way back around. I started working for some unscrupulous people who did collection. I don't call it the mob. It's not some cool story like that, but yeah, I guess, that would be the classification for it. But I started working in bars and restaurants, and I started working down in the city because I was homeless. I spent some time after I moved out from that woman's basement. I essentially spent 6 to 9 months homeless, but I had a car, so I don't really want to get into I don't want to say I didn't have anything. I'll be completely honest. I was homeless as far as a physical house went, but I had a car, and it didn't run all the time. But I had a good buddy who helped me kind of keep it running sometimes. But it didn't run all the time. But when it did, it got me to and fro, and I was able to sleep in it. And back then, if you knew the right people, you could sleep in different places. But I got into working with some people who, again, really weren't that great. But I quickly got out of that from a group of individuals who just kind of took me under their wing. They introduced me. It was through the martial arts communities because I was hanging out in Chinatown a little bit. And I know this all sounds like a B-rated martial arts movie, and it kind of is, but I was hanging out in Chinatown a bit, and I was also working security gigs for different individuals, and a group of individuals who were military based. They were military service members who started working private contracts. So back then, this is when the Halliburtons and the Northrop Grummons, and even occasionally the BlackRocks of the world, were hiring ex-military professionals to do private service contracts. And they would do that overseas in different places. I was not one of them. I want to be very clear here. I was not in the military, and I have no military background other than being a military brat, which, given that I had a military ID, being a military brat, gave me some leeway into actually having credence with these individuals, and also giving me access to getting on base because I had a military ID, and my father was a command sergeant major. So that helps. That being said, how this all played out was these military individuals got me out of the bad situations and started giving me work to do. I learned how to be a driver, and I learned how to be a medic on their team. They sent me to a 6-week intensive program that was held at one of the instructional bases where I learned what essentially was a civilian version of being a combat medic. It was a really cool program. I still think the military does programs like this every once in a while, but military individuals taught us how to do service combat training. Service medic training. So we learned everything from tourniquets to triaging wounds we had this amazing, I'm really bad with names, and I do apologize. And I know that makes everybody be like, oh, he's lying, whatever. I don't really give a crap anymore. There was this amazing woman who was a medical doctor for the Air Force. And the base I was at, they did helo pilot training. And it was an ordnance training facility. So the the choppers would actually do attack runs on the mountainside to blow up the old ordnances that didn't get done from the tank training and stuff. It was a very interesting place. But she was a doctor in the Air Force, and she taught us all sorts of cool stuff about like how people respond in fight or flight situations and in you know, stressful survival situations. And we did live exercises where, no, it wasn't live fire or anything like that. This was a civilian thing. But they set up really interesting and like dynamic situations. One of them was like you walk into a room and there's, people on the floor, right? Like, what do you do? And turns out in this scenario, like they kept it kind of civilian based in the sense of it was an electrocution issue. There was a power line that came loose and there was a water spill and they electrified an individual. And you're like, some people, if you run up, you're going to get electrocuted. So like these very interesting dynamic things. They also did like, okay, yeah, there is an active shooter situation. They didn't call it that kind of stuff back then, but there was a kinetic outcome situation where an individual was shot. What do you do? And you had to, you had to go and you had to see, and it was like a dynamic experience so that like you didn't know actually really what happened. You just know like somebody got shot, but there's other things going on. So you had to learn how to do like body scans and do a body scan for someone. Like, okay, let's flip you over, let's strip you down. Like, are you bleeding anywhere else? And you kind of have to go head to toe and make sure like you never know. Even in a car accident situation, you have to like go over the whole body. Maybe they broke something or maybe something else got lacerated or maybe they're bleeding somewhere else. If they have a giant knife wound you didn't know about that's bleeding them out, like you need to know about these things. So that medic training really kind of pushed my mind into, oh, okay, like I'm pretty good at this stuff. Like I'm pretty good with these situations. And I was working with this team of individuals that did town car rentals back at the time. Town car rentals, for those who are too young to remember, is what we had before we had Uber. If you were a high level professional or you really needed to get like it was usually for longer distances too. You could rent a town car and a company would send a Lincoln town car with a driver and, they would take you where you needed to go. The company that I was working for did private security stuff. So that's why they sent me to this medic training. And so I learned private security stuff. I learned how to drive evasively. I learned how to do situational awareness stuff. I was also, again, really engrossed into learning martial arts and physical defense and all of these different ways to harm individuals. And with that, I ended up understanding how to break a human body. At the same time I'm doing that, I'm learning that I don't like doing that. I don't like being a part of those high stressful environments. And although, yeah, I was just on the B team. So like when you would call the transport company to get a town car, one of those things was there was this package, like these other packages that were kind of hush hush at the time, but it was all kind of nonsensical. Now that I think about it, it's just ridiculous. It's all very more standardized nowadays. But this was like the beginning of this stuff was you could get a town car rental and it could come with a security detail. This was nowadays the common term that you would hear for this. If you go on vacation and you have a specific driver who's like really good at like knowing information and is also there to protect you, that's known as a handler. So really what we were doing is we were providing handler services for individuals who were high level executives at pharmaceutical companies or oil tycoons who were coming over from overseas. I was on the team because I was a young idiot who dealt with their spouses and their family members and were like, hey, drive these people to New York and help them go shopping and take them out to dinner and then bring them back or get them to their hotel safely and to and fro. And so that was the team I was working on the most. I did see some triage events and I did see some altercations. And yeah, I was also working security at bars and other things at the time. So I was doing a lot of physical work, I'll call it that way. Physical altercation was not something that was honestly all that special to me at the time. It happened so often. I started with, being an enforcer, collecting for individuals, as a bouncer, being like, hey, kid, I'll break you off, some cash if you go collect money from that guy over at the bar over there. Oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Like that was the stupid stuff that I got myself into. And then I got into the private security stuff. And then eventually I was like, I'm done. And the martial arts communities at the time were really where I was the most peaceful. And I liked that. I liked this peaceful aspect of myself where I didn't have to be in this high stress. Remember, my mental health was terrible. So beyond, the random suicidal attempt every once in a while, I was also just treating myself badly. And when I was homeless, a set of individuals responded to that. And I'm going to say it was right around 21, 22. I do remember I could drink. So it was right around 21, 22. This individual took me on as, I don't even know if it was considered an apprentice, but he was a mentor to me. Dr. Fong took me in. He was an acupuncturist and he worked with an apothecarist, and he was also one of our martial arts instructors. And he kind of, I guess, just took a liking to me in the sense that like I paid attention, I did what he asked, and I was always hanging out because again I was homeless at the time. His wife, this weird situation. She was Korean and he was Chinese, and they had to flee their countries because at the time that they got married, that was like a no in general. But also he was trying to escape the communist takeover of China, and as a businessman and from Hong Kong who was kind of doing business in South Korea and meets this woman, and then they have to flee to Malaysia. I think I always get it backwards if it was Singapore to Malaysia or Malaysia to Singapore, but along those lines, and then end up here in America and, making a life for themselves. So she was actually really good at making Korean beauty products. So she taught me how to like mix creams and salves and make what we called it the jowls, but herbal liniments. And he was doing acupuncture and this thing called Twina. And he was like, hey, essentially he was like, hey kid, you're good at this. This is how you do Twina. And Twina is a specific set of Topotment exercises, physically striking the body for a therapeutic outcome. But it's traditional Chinese medicine. It's Twina, and it's a massage set. And he taught me the different sets to do. And so back then, none of this stuff was licensed. None of this stuff and we're practicing in Chinatown, so like nobody cares. He teaches me how to do these Twina sets. And so an individual will come in, and as part of the treatment, he'd be like, all right, do Twina set 12 or Twina set 18. And so or do it. And then at that time I was starting to kind of understand like, all right, this is how this works. I just became absolutely fascinated with it. And so I just picked his brain about everything, and he gave me things to read. And I just really dived into traditional Chinese medicine. And although I couldn't ever have that as an outlet, it was where my brain got the best effect. And then I also have these people who were not my family, were literally from a different country, who in some cases I would sit at dinner tables and no one would speak English. And it was honestly just really peaceful. It was just a time in my life where I just wanted to be quiet. And there was something about a dinner table where nobody spoke English that was just kind of like, I don't know. It was reverent. That was a spiritual thing for me. And those people knew, like, we barely knew anything about each other. And they took really good care of me. And it changed fundamentally who I was as a person. I was a shitty person before that. I really was. Honestly, I might still be to this day. But the fact that I could recover from something I thought was impossible to recover from, I literally wanted to die every day. Like I just wanted it to be over. But I was too cowardly to make a full attempt. I had made attempts, but never actually gone through with it. And this martial arts training and these individuals who took care of me and allowed me to have outlets started to slowly change my understanding of who I was. I didn't want to hurt people. That wasn't who I was as a person. I didn't honestly want to hurt people. I was really effing good at it, but I didn't want to do it. I was training female fighters at one point. There was a fight school that None of the girls, would, and again, like, you got to remember, we're going back 15, 20 years. These girls would like be out and about, hang out around the gym, and they'd want to train, but like no one trained girls back then. Like, the female training was not even, it didn't even exist in MMA back then. Bellator didn't exist. None of the underfighting, cards had women on them ever. And so the fight camps didn't focus on them. Boxing, yeah, a girl could go get trained in boxing, but they wanted to do the MMA stuff. So I took the opportunity, started training female fighters. That was another thing that changed me fundamentally as a person. I was now taking everything I was being taught and being able to give it to other individuals so they could use it. And I started to see like this connection between like the mental health and the physical output, and the mental health and the physical output. And then I got into bodybuilding a little bit. Now, I didn't really do bodybuilding, but I worked with, I trained with bodybuilders. I did more of the strongman competition stuff, but I started lifting, and I started like, I was doing the Shaolin stuff, which I still, honestly, I've come back to, and doing my Tai Chi and all that. And I started to just see these connections. We have this mental system that does this translation between something else that back then, honestly, I couldn't describe. And today I still struggle with a little bit, but there was this physical output that kind of talked to that. You get the endocrine system moving, you get the endorphins, you get just a better well-being, and you start to take care of yourself, and then you start to get in the diet, and you start to see progress. Whereas I was wasting away and not really accomplishing anything as a young individual in my adolescence into my teenage years, just this fat butterball person I still to this day absolutely despise, which is the reason I changed who I was. But when I started to then give that to other people, like, hey, like, here's this Tai Chi thing, you can get your mobility and flexibility back. Here's this self-defense stuff so you can protect yourself when you're out on the street. Here is this way to just shut off the outside world and really just come in here and train and just be. One of the big things we used to say all the time back then is leave it at the door. Leave it at the door. I'm doing my best not to curse right now because we used to do a lot of that back then. No cussing. Yeah, we used to say, look, leave it at the door. Just leave it at the door. If you came in and you were there to train, we were there to train. That's what we did. We trained, and we trained hard. We did iron body work, conditioning training. I never fought as far as like in a ring for competitive reasons. Mostly because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to follow the rules. My training was never, I was a martialist. I wasn't a martial artist. I trained martial arts. I do like martial arts. I think everybody should pick up one. It's great. But I was a martialist. Everything that they were teaching me, I was using in a situation that was maybe not life or death, but could be life or death. And so, or to protect other people, which is even more important. That's actually like the general basis behind having self-defense abilities, I believe. And, the level I was doing it was so that I could protect other people if I needed to, which then made me a responsible individual to the community, which is where I'm kind of going with this. Is I started to see these correlations, and I haven't even gotten into all the philosophy stuff I studied as far as, like Galen and Greek retroduction and Greek philosophy and Greek physiology and, Greek medicine, as well as Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. And then also the cultivation methods like Qigong, which is my current practice, or Qi breathing or prana cultivation, or any other number of things, like even like Immanuel Kant or Thomas Hobbes or Madame Curie or Madame Blavatsky, even going down that whole rabbit hole into, spirituality to a degree of like cultural and religious and historical spirituality of the background of history of spirituality in general, into Manly P. Hall and all of these different experiences and different ways of thinking. But I started to putting connections together. And as I was putting these connections together, I started to learn about how hyperlogical I can be. So I started to learn about myself. And then all of a sudden I had this thing called self-awareness. And I learned how mental health and self-awareness work together. I learned that there's these three health bodies, this thing that every one of these systems I had practiced and learned about and studied and continue to study work together. You have a physical health body. You have a mental health body. You have a spiritual health body. And the physical health body, now that I've done all this research and have all this knowledge, and in some cases wisdom, it's not ours. We quote unquote own it and we call it ours, but it's wholly its own thing. You are trillions of cells and bacteria just doing one specific thing. And this is the lesson that I learned at those dinner tables, dealing with other cultures and the understanding of Buddhism, of Chan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism and the differentiations there. I had an Aikido teacher who was very he was a Shinto Buddhist. And so that was the spiritual practice of Buddhism. Whereas on the other side of it, I was getting Chan Buddhism from my Shaolin martial arts training. And just, it's a lot. I don't have enough time on this podcast right now to talk about it because this one's getting long enough. And I'm all over the place on this one because it got me a little emotional. So not something that happens to me very often. So I had all of these different experiences that showed me these 3 different health bodies. And those 3 different health bodies, the understanding of it, I realized, oh, that's self. Everything we're always talking about, when we talk about the physical health, and we talk about mental health, and we talk about spiritual health, we're talking about the self. You have to have all 3. They're made together. You can't have one without the other, that kind of deal. And the mental health is the one that talks. It's the one that's communicating between the other 2. This is what my entire book is about. The manuscript I'm currently working on is about, it's a proverbial how-to on cultivating self-awareness and understanding mental health. Mental health being the conversation between the physical and spiritual health body. And everyone has a different way they come about it. I'm a very mental person who only ever had physical outlets as a kid, right? Everything they did to me was physical. Well, I mean, there was mental abuse too, but like the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, like that, and the eating crappy food and getting fat and no one telling me like, hey kid, go for a walk, that ruined me physically. And so that on top of the bigotry and the control structures built into, Mennonitism is built on work for your salvation. And just like, look, again, you can have whatever religious beliefs you want. I'm not against it. Just make sure you're not harming other individuals, and it's faith-based and not blind faith-based or indoctrination based. Like dogma is a real evil. As you know, on the spiritual side, I had a terrible background there too. And so at all sides, the communication was bad. And so the mental health just, I was nothing. Like I literally was nothing. And when I learned that, having sat at these dinner tables and had these conversations that I wasn't really a part of, but like I had like, the younger kids would kind of translate for me every once in a while. I learned, do not put your chopsticks straight up and down in a bowl of rice. That will get you hit with a wooden spoon. Rightfully so. I did not know at the time. In fact, funny side story. The woman, she that took care of me for the most part, she would like make me meals actually, and like make me take them to the studio with me under the guise that I was delivering her husband meals. Yeah, no. She would always make way too much, and then he would send it with me, or make me eat it there. She let me go like a couple weeks doing the whole chopsticks and the rice thing. It just let it happen at her dinner table. Until one of the younger kids was like, hey, you have to stop doing that. And I was like, what? She's like, you don't, that's like what we do that with the joss sticks for a funeral. Like that's like we at a shrine, like you'll do that, or, to pay respects to someone, you'll put the joss sticks in. So it looks like the incense or joss sticks at a memorial or a funeral or at a spiritual procession. And I was like mortified that I had done that. And so then I guess she was either paying attention to the kid telling me, or she found out later about it. Cause like a week went by and I had like just totally forgot, like not even thinking about it. I just put my chopsticks and I just got thwapped in the top of the head with a wooden spoon. And she was like, you essentially like, better. Like now you know better. So don't do it. Not at my dinner table. And I was like, and it was just this like positive, like she didn't hurt me. Honestly, I was twice her size at that time, 3 times her size really. And she did it with just like such care that I just got like tapped on the top of the head with a wooden spoon. I know it sounds ridiculous, but the care that was in that strike, it was being struck. I wasn't being hit. Hit denotes that and this was part of my martial arts training at the time. Like A hit denotes I'm trying to hurt you. If I hit you, I'm trying to hurt you. That has intention. And so this little like strike on the top of the head with a wooden spoon, and then hands me a new bowl of rice because I was like halfway done that one. she's like took it from me, put my chopsticks down, refilled it, and then gave it back to me. That was like a life altering experience. Like that. Oh, this was a positive correction, physically done with a mental intention, a part of a spiritual practice, right? That I'm literally like degrading their spiritual practice at a dinner table of a place that like they just took me in at, right? Like looking back on that, I'm still mortified that I did that, but situations like that changed me fundamentally as a human and as a person because it taught me how these health bodies work together. And it gave me experiences that allowed me to see that my mental health was under my control. That learning meditation and learning Tai Chi and learning my physical practices and taking care of my physical body gave me better mental fortitude. That my mental fortitude allowed me to understand other people's spiritual practices. And although mine has evolved into its own spiritual practice as of today, it came from a different perspective where I didn't really have one. And the one that I was indoctrinated into as a child didn't fit me at all. But I didn't even know to think that like there's this thing, this spiritual health body that you have to maintain. I just thought it was nonsense back then. And then I even learned about what nonsense really is. And I learned so many other things, specifically intention. And eventually, through all of that, I started to have my own methods and my own ways and started to piece together my own self-awareness. And my own self-awareness was this hyper expose on the fundamentals of the human system. And so I dove into the primordials of chaos, creation, order, and destruction. I learned the symbolism. I even became a Mason for a little while to see what they were all about and what they knew. Turns out it wasn't for me, but just every little thing I could compartmentalize into different pieces that I could get my hands on to then draw together into this bigger picture on like a cork board with like the pins and the strings. That's what it looks like when I put all these pieces together. That led me to be a better body worker. And I learned at the time that I had this skill set and I should use it. I should be available to the community because I have these skills. That's what my teachers did. I didn't learn that at massage school. I just learned how to massage at massage school. I had great teachers. I have amazing teachers at massage school. But when it came to body work, my mentors, they made money, but eventually they moved to the West Coast to be with their daughter. Or Dr. Fong moved to the West Coast to be with his daughter. His wife went with him, obviously. But like I had other mentors there that were teachers, and they moved away or they moved back home, but they didn't make a ton of money from some of these practices. Like it wasn't, a gut rich quick thing. It was a serve the community and have positive physical, mental, and spiritual health. That was the reward. Yes, there was a monetary value that came with that. You got to pay your bills. Like I was an accountant for a while. I learned, how money works and how banking works and all that stuff. I've just had so many experiences, but all of it boils down to learning these processes and these three health bodies and then the primordials and then the different pieces of what physical health means and what spiritual health means and what mental health means and how all of that wraps up into self-awareness. The self is all those three pieces. And being aware of it is the starting point of actually being able to create a good system, a good health body, or a good life, to be honest. So that's what the book's about, and that's what I'm working on. And this one's gotten quite long, but hopefully that explains my background. It's a fraction of it, to be honest. It's so much it's hard to even talk about sometimes, just because there's just so many pieces to it. And it's just kind of ridiculous even when I think about it. I'm like, it's all just kind of ridiculous. But my mental health is way better nowadays than it ever has been. And it continues to get better. And in my practice in doing body work, I was able to learn that although I may have made mistakes in the past, that being available to the community and providing the services that I can, that's where the ego stops being, or sorry, that's where the humbleness needs to get left behind. I was being humbled to hide and not being humble in the sense of like, no, I generally like try to be humble with people, right? Everyone has different backgrounds and everyone comes from different places and everyone's seen different things. And honestly, I've seen some heinous stuff in my life, which makes me a very calm individual in most cases. So I'm able to interact with people at a level that benefits them in some ways. But I'm trying to be humble about it. But being humble and hiding and not being able to be able to help the communities and help individuals, that's not the right type of humble. So I have to understand, like, look, how it lines up currently, I'm probably one of the best therapeutic body workers there is in the country. That has a responsibility to it. So I can be humble and hide that, which is not the right action, or I can be marginally humble and understand that I have this and I should help other individuals learn this and I should help the community with something like a podcast where I get to share all this. So this one has honestly been exhausting. I'm a very introverted individual. And so even doing a podcast is like, okay, this is a social event to me. But I previously did a podcast specifically on mental health and self-awareness. And it was honestly one of the most cathartic things I've ever done. And so in doing that podcast, I brought that forward into this podcast. And so I wanted to do an episode where I covered who I am, because that's part of being someone who gets to tell other people about mental health and self-awareness is like, yeah, I've been through some things. To boil it all down for you and like what the book is really about and what my perspective comes from. Yeah, I shared the part about the three health bodies and the self and the self-awareness and mental health and the primordials. Here's my take. Take it or leave it. And honestly, take it with a grain of salt, but here's my take. The word depression, as I've shared before, is defined by the old astrological term that when something passes below the horizon line, a sidereal body passes below the horizon line, it depresses itself into the mind, into the imagination of the human system. And depression, personally, I feel is the one thing that connects all humans. Even though I generally don't believe in humanity, I think it was a failed experiment. That doesn't mean I want the end of it. I have in the past wanted the end of myself, but it would be even more selfish to want the end of all humanity. And so I've learned not to be selfish. I have learned, though, that, yeah, I just don't believe in the human system as far as it is defined currently and the way that we use it and go about our lives. I think we are a failed experiment. That doesn't mean I don't interact with that experiment. And in interacting with it, I have learned that depression is what uniquely defines who you are. And I can never, ever understand that. I can have compassion, and I can have what's known as, I don't even know if I want to bring up that word, but because I don't really have a great understanding of it other than the hyperlogical definition I've given to it. You can have what's known as unconditional love. And unconditional love is trying to understand someone else's depression when you know you will ultimately fail to do so. And you may only choose to have unconditional love for certain individuals in your life, and that's totally fine. I am an introvert who will probably only have that at a degree in which they will become a personal relationship with a few individuals. But I can say that unconditional love is that trying to find out about someone else's depression, knowing you will ultimately fail it, because depression is so uniquely who you are as an individual, how you see the world, how you've experienced the world, how you continue to experience the world, that, yeah, no, it's impossible to understand that. But it's who you are. It's because it's how the world literally depresses itself into your consciousness and how you make sense of it. That's depression. The clinical side of that is much different. There's melancholia and all of these different old terms that we've now wrapped up into the words clinical depression. And you should seek out mental health advocates and mental health professionals to help you with that. But we really need to understand that everyone's depressed. and that mental health is not, I repeat, not a negative thing. It's just one of your health bodies. Just like we try not to treat the physical health of someone as a negative thing, it can be both positive and negative. It's a dichotomy. It's a measurement system. It is what's known as yin yang. It has two sides, but it is one coin. There's no such thing as duality. There's only trinity. There's the measurement of the many coins, the differentiation of the sides. That negative connotation that's on mental health must go away. We cannot continue as a society with that as the understanding that mental health is a negative term. And so that starts at the individual, and at the individual, it starts as the understanding of self. And to understand yourself, you must have awareness of it. You must be aware that you are 3 health bodies, and you might have one health body that really honestly resonates more to you than the others. And you should pursue that. I have pursued my mental health body to an umpteenth degree, and it continues to be beneficial to me. By getting control of my mental health and my mental health states, I've been able to accomplish some awesome things. And I can only hope that you would find time to look at your health bodies and choose the one that resonates the most with you so that you too can go accomplish amazing things and awesome things. Keeping in mind that that might be as simple as getting better sleep, taking the trash out more often, not letting the boxes pile up in the house, going for a jog now and then, going for a walk now and then, picking up a spiritual health practice. Like, those are all amazing accomplishments. We're stuck in a society that drains us with this constant necessity of interaction with very little intention. And I go over all of this in depth in the book, and hopefully we will have that out by Christmas time, if I'm lucky. But this one has gotten long enough, and again, mentally drained because I had to share some things about myself, and that sometimes makes me a bit uncomfortable. But in order for people to trust my opinion, I think they need to understand where I come from and who I am. And that's the most basic version of it I can give you for now. So I hope you enjoyed learning about me. Look forward to doing some interviews with some individuals in the future. But for now, I will shamelessly plug purebulk.com because honestly, they help too in the mental health thing. PureBulk was probably one of my coolest accomplishments I ever pulled off when I was younger doing that other podcast. I did this podcast, and honestly, it kind of like part of my career too. Like, I did this podcast, and I'm this body worker, and I'm doing some stuff, and there's this affiliate program with PureBulk, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll sign up with that. That's cool. Like, I was getting supplements through them, and so I sign up, and I start doing some videos about products, and I do this one video about this one product that just kind of blows up out of nowhere. And like doesn't go like massively viral, but like for me, it was like, whoa, this is crazy. And I made a decent commission, from the sales. And then all of a sudden, an individual, shout out to Glenn at PureBulk, he reaches out to me and he's like, hey, you did this cool video, and finds out that I'm a practitioner. I do body work, and he wants me to be a part of a practitioner program that he's creating. I was like, okay, cool. Like, what's this all about? And he starts rattling off some names that I'm like, what? Like Dr. Rimka. Like, I'm like, whoa. These are doctors. I'm not that. And he still like accepts me into the program and allows me to sell PureBulk in-house, like as a physical retail location. It had never been done before. He was pioneering the program. And he put me on this list with these individuals that were like way out of my weight class on that one. So that was just like a really cool moment to be like, wow, all right, like maybe I am more than what I thought I was. Like, I thought I was just some dumb kid back then, but turns out like this dude respected my opinion, and PureBulk respected my, knowledge enough to bring me on as a practitioner. And I'm thankful to them for that. So sorry, got a little sidetracked. You can go to purebulk.com and get pretty much any supplement you could possibly think of at the highest quality you're going to find. Honestly, like, they're not allowed to make statements like that, but I'll tell you, give it the sniff test, which is how you like can tell different supplements from other supplements. There are some of the best quality out there. Their team is amazing. Their products are amazing. Can't recommend them highly enough. If you go to purebulk.com, you can use Stoic Bodywork 15 for your first purchase and get 15% off your first purchase. You can also then continue to use the code Stoic Bodywork to continue to get 10% off of all purchases after that. One of rare companies out there that allows you to just continue to get a discount with our affiliate code. So take advantage of that. I would highly recommend their new electrolyte packs, which I should talk about more. They just got electrolytes on. They have great protein, just super high quality whey protein. If you're someone who's sensitive to bad whey proteins, definitely try theirs out. What else is on? There's just so many things. N-acetyl L-cysteine, they're probably the number one source for NAC in the whole country, because I've smelled their NAC compared to others' NAC. Hands down, there's nothing as high quality as theirs that I've ever seen anywhere. Yeah, if you're looking for a supplement, just head over to purebulk.com and grab one, and use Stoic Bodywork 15 for your first purchase, and then Stoic Bodywork after that to get 10% off all your orders. I will catch you on the next episode. Thank you.